Thank you very much. A couple of questions on the salmon. It's been said that $279 million loss in 2009, $255 million loss in 2008, some 2,690 and 2,263 jobs were lost. Is that correct? Is that what happened to the salmon industry?
That is substantially correct. That's what happened to the salmon industry, yes.
Mr. Herrick, you were talking about the area of origin. Are these counties the area of origin counties? Nevada, Placer, El Dorado, Calaveras, Tuolumne, Mariposa, Merced, are those area of origin counties?
Absolutely. That's where much of the water originates that flows down into the main rivers that go into the delta.
And this bill, in its present form, would remove their rights and substitute federal law. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Why would anybody representing those counties support this piece of legislation?
I can't explain why, but the water battles in California make people line up on different sides at different times. But as soon as you limit the project's responsibility for their impacts to fisheries, then those responsibilities necessarily get shifted onto everybody else, especially the area of origin counties. And I think they're just now waking up to the fact that their future water rights are threatened directly by this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Steele, you were unable to finish your major points. Would you like to take about a minute and 20 seconds and go over those points of objection that you were about to say when you ran out of time?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. Point one was the physical and biological conditions of the Delta are different now, dramatically different than they were in 1994. Nailing down the Bay Delta Accords of 1994 as the solution permanently does not reflect current conditions and will not solve the problems. Two, suspending the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act and other relevant state and federal laws does not solve these water problems. It simply ignores them. Three, hatchery fish are not wild fish, contrary to the proposition proposed by this legislation. And four, fishing jobs and fishing communities matter too. Those are my points.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, this piece of legislation has several problems. Notably, it overrides state water rights as suggested by the Western States Council, and it also ignores the reality. I think I'll let it go there and come back later. Thank you very much for the time.
Actually, you can come back now. The gentlelady's time has expired, and Mr. Garamendi is recognized for 5 minutes.
Could I yield to Mr. Miller first and then come back?
Of course.
You go ahead, James. Go.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I go ahead, and then you'll come back to Mr. Garamendi.
If the gentleman yields you his time, you may do anything you want with it.
I'm not taking his time. No.
Okay, then I'll take my time now. I want to make sure that we understand the view of the Western States Water Council, and if you could very briefly describe the way in which this piece of legislation overrides the policies, that is, the state water right policies of the Council.
As I mentioned, one of the Council's purposes is to protect state rights and prerogatives related to water and the importance of states retaining the primary responsibility for allocating their rights. I won't try to, I'm not an expert in California water rights. I would, though, point out that in many instances here, these are contractual rights. The Section 8 of the Reclamation Act also applies in many other areas where the water users actually hold the property right to the use of the water and not the Bureau of Reclamation. So we would be concerned of any precedent that was set by overriding Section 8 and that guarantee of state protections. I would mention that we were able to circulate our testimony to our members to review. 11 Western states responded with concerns about the bill. Also, with respect to the governors, They have adopted a number of policy positions, one related to the Endangered Species Act, in which they talk about the states possessing broad responsibilities as trustees and also with police powers and with primacy over fish and wildlife and water within their borders. And I would mention the governor's in Libra principle, which they adopted in Libra principles, and which they are reviewing now and will act on at the end of this month at their annual meeting. In Libra was a word coined by Governor Leavitt at the time, also Health and Human Services Director, and it means balance and stewardship. And as part of those, I would just note that they talk about collaboration and not polarization, about focusing on results and not programs, on sound science and using the process for determining our priorities. And I'd note, as a quasi-economist minoring in economics, I'm not sure there is a reasonable man, but we keep trying to find a balance between our economic and our environmental needs. And we go through the process, which this is part of.
Thank you very much. In your testimony, Mr. Herrick, you were making comments with regard to the 800,000 acre feet of environmental water. In your view, is that the minimum or the maximum available? And you were talking about if that's the minimum, then others would lose water to have to make up, while the preferred person, a preferred district, that is the San Luis unit, would not. Could you go into that for about a minute?
Yes, the original CVPIA dedicated an additional 800,000 acre feet of water for fishery purposes. That's a very general statement. There were certain limitations on that. There was other water anticipated to be needed both under CVPIA and under other ongoing regulatory schemes. By limiting the 800,000 as the obligation of certain export contractors, that means that no ongoing past or future analysis which indicates that additional water than that is needed can go forward. Right now, the State Water Resource Control Board is holding hearings on San Joaquin River flows and Bay Delta flows. And they've already indicated, as I mentioned, as all the fishery agencies had, additional water is needed above and beyond what's being done now. And that means my clients, people in the hills, people in Northern California, they will have to provide that water because federal law will exclude one of the parties.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like permission to read into the record, or to put into the record, an article that appeared on May 20th, that Delta pumps kill over 1.9 million native fish in 3 days. And this is information from the Department of Fish and Game, the California Department of Fish and Game. Seek permission to put that in the
Without
record.
objection.
Thank you. Also, I don't have it with me right now, but I'd like to put into the record the testimony of Mr. Birmingham regarding the actual job losses for the Westlands Water District. That was testimony that his court testimony, and I'd like to put that in the record when I get my hands on it.
The record will remain open for 10 days from the adjournment of the hearing and without objection.
I'd also like to put into the record the actual allocations by district and by contract over the last 5 years, and I'll put that in the record. It will show that there is substantially, that most districts receive near 100%, and the Westlands or the San Luis unit is the only district that has been short for many of these years, and I'll put that in the record also.
Without
Thank
objection.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller for 5 minutes.